Nelly, welcome to the show. I've known you for quite some time, and the people that don't know you, and also I've read somewhere Ogoti, to get to know a person,
Yeah.
you need to understand the early stages of their life.
Okay.
Right, so give us a summary when you were born in 95, 96, whenever you were born, what was happening there,
Yeah.
and the things that you can remember that shaped the woman that sits before me today.
Okay, thank you, Kgosi. I'll start off by saying thank you for having me here. Definitely not 95 or 96. I'd love that. You're making me younger. Mm-hmm. But so my actual full name is Nelisiwe Zandile Sikhosana, but I'll actually always go by Neli. And the reason is because people will butcher your name. So I've heard Neliswa, Nelisiwe. So I'm always like Neli, but I'm also very specific on how you spell it. So it's Neli, not the American double Ly.
Yeah.
And I was born the 1st of September, 1992. I've got a mom, of course, who's the love of my life. Anybody that knows me knows my mom is the love of my life. I've got two older sisters. And I think when I'm thinking about my earliest memory of my childhood and where I come from, is my mom being my mom and my dad. Like, she's always been my mom and my dad. Single parent, really raising three girls all by herself. I'm the baby of the family. So I've seen her really strive through life to provide for three girls. And I think my earliest memory of me growing up was my mom always telling us, like, life is what you make it. You decide what your life looks like, and you're going to do whatever interests you or that you find fascinating. And I talk a lot.
Yeah.
You know me? I talk quite a bit. And I think I've always been a person that's passionate about talking, passionate about helping others in any way. I actually, because I've got a huge memory box that I always put stuff in from as young as probably like 6 or 7. Okay. And it's always like things that I wanted to do. And I was reading it a couple weeks ago, and what I discovered was I've always just wanted to help people. So I consider myself a sunflower, meaning I'm here to just spread light and positivity in this world.
I like that. Okay, cool. Let's talk about, let's pick two themes from that memory box, right?
Yeah.
From your childhood.
Yes.
You said you started it when you were 6.
Yes,
right?
I think it was like 6 or 7.
Okay, cool. What are the two things that I would find that are like a common theme besides you being a sunflower?
Yes.
What are the two other things that you remember that are dear to you, number one, but also shaped the person that you are now?
I think words, right? Like, and words in relation to like school learning, but also words in relation to having a conversation with people.
Okay.
Because from very young, I used to write letters to anyone and everyone.
Okay.
Is as in, I'd write a letter to my mom. So maybe I was supposed to wash the dishes. I didn't wash the dishes. And then she got home and she was like, why didn't you wash the dishes? So I'd say, I'm sorry. But then I'd also write a letter. So I think I've always been one that is very interested in words and connecting with people and talking to people. So reading, writing, learning has always been like an interest and very integral part of who I am. And then I think the second one is music.
Okay.
I absolutely just love music. And I think it's also just, like I said, joining it back to life. We get to learn about people's experiences through listening to them, right?
Sure.
And you're essentially listening to words, but also words can be translated into music. And then there's now, symphonies that are associated with it. But I think it's just the sharing of experiences that individuals have had in life that I find interesting. And I think that's why I love words and I love language and I love speaking to people. And I think if it was the two themes, it would be music, and words or learning. Yeah, those would.
Why the letters though? What?
I think also, which is a good question, because there's something about when I know times have changed now and we're all like electronic, right? But there's something about putting pen to paper that makes it eternal in some sense, right? And I think, even the little letters I'd write would be, hi mom, I'm sorry I didn't wash the dishes, right? Because it's two-way, which is interesting as you grow older, I'm interrogating that more. But when you're having a conversation like with you, I'm having a conversation with you now, you're hearing me and you're listening to me, right?
Sure.
You're hearing how I'm enunciating things and I'm speaking about it, and you're making some form of interpretations.
Yeah.
But I think what I like also about letters and writing things down is that yes, you're hearing me now and I'm articulating it. But when you're going to sit at a later stage and read a letter, there's some people who actually read a letter in the person's voice.
Ooh.
And then there's other people who read a letter in their own voice, meaning you're now bringing your own experiences. And I think it's that important essence about this is something that I'm sharing with you. However you're going to receive it, if you're going to, at a later stage, read it with my voice and my life experience or your voice, the meaning of what I'm saying. I'm sorry I didn't wash the dishes. And I know it sounds mediocre,
sure,
but I'm sorry I didn't wash the dishes just signifies that, one, I acknowledged what I did was not okay. And I wanted to be memorialized, if that's the correct word.
Sure.
But it must be then solidified that, hey, this is what I was feeling at the time.
I'm actually glad that I'm not the only crazy person that still writes letters, right? A friend of mine, Kacheni, used to laugh at me.
Yeah?
So, just a side story. When I broke up with my ex from Cape Town,
yes,
right, I wanted a way that's personal to articulate why I'm breaking up, to articulate the trauma and everything that I've been through over the period that we've been together, right? And I wrote a 50-page letter.
Whoa, okay. No, my letters have never been 50 pages. 50 pages. Wait, is this A4 or like tiny A3 or like,
no, it's a proper A4. Like your exam pad, yes.
50?
So when I start writing, I realized that I can't stop. And when I trace it back, I remember in high school, one of my essays was featured in the Drum magazine because of how I play with words, how I articulate things.
Yes.
And the topic of that essay was write a letter about you or your story of your life, something like that. So when I started writing, I couldn't finish.
Oh my.
Right? But yeah, I'm glad that there's someone who appreciates pen and paper.
Yes, no, I do. I was actually going to say, sorry to interrupt you for a bit. Last Christmas, a friend of mine.
Christmas.
No, so like 2023.
Yeah.
A friend of mine for Christmas got me like a writing kit, like a Victorian writing kit with like a little stamp with different envelopes, like the quill. It's like the most beautiful. And it was so interesting when she gave it to me. She's like, because I think I had written her a letter or I'd spoken about how I love Victorian era and I love words. And then she got me that. And now I can't stop writing letters. But it's so interesting where I'm also now writing letters to myself. And it's something that I've been doing since I was young. Like I'll write, I'm 17, I'll write a letter to my 18-year-old self. And then of course you grow up and then you take a pause. But now I've actually made it a milestone like every 5 or 10 years. So there's certain letters that I read. And I think I read one when I turned 30. Now I'm going to be heading to 35. There's going to be one that I'm going to read. But I also then keep the ones that I wrote in previous years to the latest one. And I just, maybe I'm going to collect like 50 letters to myself at some age, 50 pages.
That's crazy because someone asked me to write a letter to a 13-year-old me. That's when I started staying by myself. Right now I needed to look retrospectively. And as we were writing that letter, we decided, which is classified information, that I need to write a book. So we are in the process of writing my book, right?
Oh, that's amazing.
No, it's not.
Why?
I had to dig deeper and I had to cry even some more, right?
Yeah.
But maybe let's talk, or rather, let me ask a personal question.
Yeah.
I know you. You've always spoken about mom. Where is dad in all of this?
That's a good question. So I love that question. And mom all the time.
Yeah.
So actually, and maybe the way I need to tell the story is going to make sense. I only found out that my dad had passed away when I was 13.
Oh.
Right.
Okay.
And people are always going interesting because for the longest time, mom was mom and dad, and it was sufficient.
Okay.
And I remember as I was getting older, and you've got friends, and they've got mom and dad, and they'll talk about whenever they would talk about their mom, it would make sense. But when they had to speak about their dad, like I had to do like a mental glitch to like be like, okay, actually, there's a dad in the family, and what do they do? So in terms of my life, my dad was a polygamist, Swati man. So my right? I'm not saying anything. I'm not generalizing, right?
No, they're like that. They are like that.
No, I can't say that. And I'll tell you why I can't say anything like that.
Okay.
So my dad was Swati. He had already had 2 wives.
Before your mom?
Yes. So now he was like a proper polygamist. Wanted to make my mom wife number 3. Oh. My mom was just there for a good time and a beautiful girl.
Hello.
Right?
Yeah.
So I didn't know my dad because then he passed away. So when I'm 13, this is what's happening. And let me tell you, how it went down. On the weekends, on Saturdays, I'd go to work with my mom. So of course I could print things out for school or whatever. And then I remember one day we were walking to her job and she said, there's something I've been wanting to tell you for years, but I always thought I would tell you when you're 13 because you'd be able to understand. And I was like, oh, what's going on? And then she said, I just want to tell you about your dad, right? And it's interesting because by 13, it's not that I hadn't been questioning, right? About where is my dad? What's happening? Why is there no father figure in my life? But also, I think because my mom was so sufficient as a mom and dad, there wasn't a void. So when she then introduced the topic, I was like, okay, cool, we're going to have the discussion. And then she said, your dad was... Mfuneni Gideon Kumalo, he passed away when you were 3 years old. He absolutely loved you. He's got family, he has a wife, he's got children. So you've got other siblings, right? And remember, like I said, I had two sisters from my mom. So then she goes, you've got your two sisters from me, but you've got other siblings from your father's side. And the reason I waited so long to tell you when you were 13 is because I didn't understand if you would understand it if I was like, your dad passed away and all of this. And side note, that's because I had a stepdad, but I think I had a stepdad until the age of 8. So even with him, he wasn't like a prominent figure in my life. But yes, then she's like, your family would love to meet you. They've been wanting to meet you for years. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then like 2 weeks later, we go at Tembisa, my dad's wife number 1. We go there and then we walk in and she's there. And so it was me, my mom, and my elder sister. And then we get there, there's other siblings, and then they introduce you to the family. Hi, this is Neli. And everybody's like, oh, we've known about you for years, which is quite fascinating because you're like 13. And I've always known this close-knit small family. And then now it's like expanded. And then it's like, no, now you've got a bigger family. And then when you start actually engaging with other siblings and cousins, and you understand how big of a family that was. Father figure, didn't have it really in my life growing up, which is things I had to work through with my psychologist as I'm older. So there wasn't really like a prominent father figure. Dad passed away when he was 3. But then my brother, Ujablani, he's like the guy version of me, right? Okay. He's like as tall as me. He looks like me. And I think it was also interesting to kind of see other people that look like you, because my two sisters from my mom's side, they have their own dad. So then I had a separate dad. And I was very much aware that their dad, who was still alive, wasn't my dad. But the question mark was always, okay, then where's this dude? So at 13, that's when I discovered my entire huge family from my father's side. And that was quite a little in my face.
Cool. So you find all of this at age 13, right? Mm-hmm. Do you get to comprehend it properly and understand what's going on? Or did you unpack it as you grow up?
It's definitely not a full comprehension at 13, right? Because remember, by 13, I think the foundational elements of my identity have already been formed. So sure. I know who I am. I know my values. I know things that I stand by. I know the characteristics that are who I am. And essentially, also things that make you who you are is your lineage, your mom and your dad. So at 13, I don't think I fully grasped what was happening or what was meant, but I think it answered for me the question about where's the other figure that contributed in me being here on earth. And then as I was growing older, it's now then working to be like, oh, there's a reason why God designed it, and I'm going to get religious too, God designed it for there to be a man and a woman to bring children and raise them, right? And I think as I was getting older, it was now starting to realize that, I actually don't have any reference of a male figure in my life in terms of whether it's a brother. And I had uncles, but they were extended uncles, right? It wasn't somebody in the household who I'd be like, okay, this is a male figure. This is what they do. So I think as I grew older, that's when I then understood, there's a level of socialization that I didn't get access to because I didn't have a father. And I remember for the longest time, it was hard for me to say growing up with a father did impact me in a certain way, because I always thought it meant growing up with a father means my mom lacked. But it was actually having to go with my therapist, right? Having conversations with my therapist, and she says, no, you're not saying your mom didn't do enough or she wasn't sufficient as a parent, because from what you're gathering, you didn't lack. But it's actually understanding that having a father teaches you certain things about being a child, about being a girl, about being a woman in the future, and should you decide to be married, for example, about being a wife. But I didn't have that in my life, so I had no source of reference of what this individual or a male figure in my life was going to do. But at 13, definitely not that. At 13, I was like, oh, okay, so I've got this extended family that I now have, and I'm going to have a conversation with. But then also, like I'm saying, because my dad was a polygamist, and it's then being, engulfed in this reality where, oh, there's a man who would have multiple wives, therefore multiple offsprings. And I remember they made a joke also, because Jabu, my brother, I think is maybe 2 or 3 years older than me. And when we were meeting, they were like, yeah, because you're going to grow older and you're going to start dating. We don't want you to bring your brother in the house and be like, umkwenyan. And that's why we wanted you to know. But I think it was just the realization that there's a different type of life that's out there that wasn't necessarily my point of reference. Having grown up, it was me, my mom, and my 2 sisters for the longest time. Then my nephew was added on like 2002 and all that. So yeah, at 13, I don't think I fully grasped what my mom was articulating to me.
I want to talk a bit about that, on what it does mentally, right? And this is me confessing or gay paisa.
Yeah.
Right? When I first saw you at MasterCard,
yes,
there was something about you that I liked. I'm like, this might be my future wife.
Yeah.
Right?
Good one.
Unpacking it in therapy, I realized, Uguti, because I grew up without a mother figure and a father figure, then I gravitate towards people, and I don't know how, without fathers.
Yeah.
And I'm attracted to those people.
Yeah.
How are you now in relationships? That's me, by the way, saying let me not finish that.
That's a good question. It's very interesting because, okay, maybe that's another thing. I'm not one that generally dates, right? And I'll say also it's maybe because for the long, and also that's the thing. I grew up with a mom who was a single parent who preached umsebenzi ndoda yakho. Like, you need to work, you need to get a job, because the job will be your husband, it will feed you, it will clothe you, it will protect you. So for me, I always grew up thinking, if I had a job, I've got everything, then I don't necessarily need a man, right? And that's the interesting part. And then as you grow older and you're like, companionship. When you're with a partner, and this is not only for like heterosexual relationships, right? Because we live in a society where, there's individuals who are not heterosexual, but it's companionship. When you're connecting yourself with people, or if you're choosing a partner, it's about companionship. So I think as I was now navigating, my longest relationship in high school, and when I was younger, was like a 1-month contract. and I go 1-month contract because it was like, I was like, I think I like you, you like me, let's date for a month and let's see if we like this, right? And if we're gonna gel. After the month, we're like, okay, cool, let's leave it. And then I entered adulthood, and then I was in a long-term on and off relationship with somebody who was significantly older than me, like 19 years older than me.
Okay.
Yes. And I think it didn't hit me when I was younger that there's a reason you're gravitating
towards
to somebody who's a father figure. And I think as I was working through it with my psychologist, and Glenda's amazing. Like, Glenda will put it as is. And I was always like, no, but he was an amazing guy. He was great. There were other things in a relationship that made it challenging and that made me go, okay, question mark, right? But with Glenda, when I'd have conversations with her and she would say, no, but as much as it was a great guy and it was good, what role did you have him in your life? And I think for me, that's when I had to sit down and be like, 90% of it was within a father figure, right?
Sure.
Because Neli did not have a father all her life, grows up, meets someone who is an amazing, honest person, but instead of going, oh, I see you as a companion and we could build a life together, even though maybe that was top of mind, but the subliminal, what was underneath the surface was, this person is going to fulfill the role of father that I never had, which was like super challenging for the longest time. Because it's like, what does that mean for me then? Is it my lack or my not having a reference of a father, is it then going to mean for the rest of my life I'm going to go look for a father figure? And I think that's why I love therapy, and I always go, yes, we're privileged to be able to afford therapy in the first place. But I think what therapy makes you do, it just makes you uncover layers and layers and layers and layers that make you who you are. And I think I'm at a point in my life now where I'm like, I'm not looking for a father figure. Rather, I'm looking for a companion, and it's somebody who we can merge our lives together and create. And I always say, and that's another thing, because my faith and my walk in Christ has been awakened. So it's now not even on a worldly level where I'm like, I want it to be Christ ordained. It should be Christ sees me with this person to fulfill something, so people can see him in our union, yes, but also in me as an individual. And I think that's how I'm approaching my life now, and understanding that, yes, there was this lack for the longest time, which was the not having a father. But I need to be sufficient in Christ also, because he's my father.
Sure.
That I'm not going to be walking around looking for a dad. That was a mouthful, I know.
No, that was perfect, right? And if you would like, I've got a gentleman I would love you to meet. He's very good.
Okay.
I vouch for him. His name is Kgosi. But cool.
Good one, Kgosi.
And then we go from discovering all of this,
Yeah.
and then having Neli established.
Yes.
Right? Let's talk through maybe the schooling life, right?
Yeah.
You go primary school, high school, varsity life.
Yes.
Maybe just summarize that.
Summarize
How
it.
were you as
Okay.
a student? Do you consider yourself the smartest?
So, of course, I'm a rainy. No, but I was very academically inclined. Like
Okay.
primary school, very smart, loved books. But that's the other thing. If you love books, you inadvertently gonna love knowledge. That's just how I see it. So primary school, always in the top, not even like top 10 anymore. Like you won top 3, right? So you're doing exceptionally well. And then you get into high school, and then I remember the high school that I went to. It was like grade 8A all the way to maybe J. And what they did, it was like all the smart students from the different primary schools go to grade 8A.
Sure.
So then, and I think it's just now bringing my social justice and advocacy. I'm like, that's just like a skewed way to just
That's
do
actually
life.
wrong.
It's wrong because you're already putting people in competition. But anyway, so we all in grade 8A, and we know we're the smartest. Like you're walking around like,
You're the it.
Doing very well, and then we form bonds with our classmates. I think the school kind of sees now that, okay, you guys are thinking too highly of yourselves. In grade 9, they put us according to our last names, and my last name is Sikhosana, so I'm there now by my J, right? So right, so now the pompous head you had in grade 8, because I was in 8A, and now you're like in grade 9J, it's like done as reps, right? But of course, academically, I'm still doing well. And also, I went to a technical high school because when I was younger, the vision was I want to go into forensic sciences, right? And so I was like, let me go into a technical high school because I'm going to learn all the science things that is going to get me there. Get to high school, I get to grade 8, grade 9, grade 10, we're picking subjects. I'm picking all the subjects that are related, like electrical technology, life science, physical science, maths. I'm like, okay, this is my path. By the end of grade 10, possibly when I'm coming back in grade 11, I'm like, actually, I don't think forensic sciences is where I want to go, right? And I remember we were then trying to figure out the schools. Like, we were like, okay, we need to get out of the school. Because I was like, technical high school is really narrowing it down for me, where I'm not doing economics. I mean, we left that in grade 9. There's no accounting. There's nothing like that. It's either you're doing civil engineering. It's all these tech subjects. We try to get to other schools, and they're like, you don't have a grade 10 portfolio. So we would recommend you just stay in your high school. And yeah, you'll see after matric, whatever you are interested in, you'll then study towards that in university. And I remember going, this is not cool. This kind of sucks. And then I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay here. The worst decision I made was I then neglected my academics, because for me, it was like, these science subjects are no longer going to take me to where I want to be, because that time an interest that was like sprouting was English. Like I loved language. I loved linguistics. So for me, it was like, okay, I need to be in a career or a profession that's got to do with language in some way. So math's not going to matter anymore. Science is not going to matter anymore. The only thing I need to focus on is English, which was the worst decision I made in my life, because then academically I went from top 10 to not even top of anything. Like now, like since school DJ, but it's the worst. So when I matriculated, I'll never forget this. I get my certificate and it says, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so how bad it was. My maths and my physics in the 30s, like 32, 38, like horrible.
Grade 12.
Yes, in matric. I matriculated, like my matric certificate. I'm not even ashamed. I'll send you a copy so you can see. Like, it was horrendous. The only thing that looked good, we're not going to count life science, right? But English was like 75. And I was proud of that. Not understanding the repercussions, what it meant. Because in my certificate, it then says you only qualify to study for a diploma or a certificate. Sure. Did I not apply to UCT for a degree in English literature and linguistics? Yeah. I'm Umachansana, Mina. Did I not apply? And then I get a decline. Of course. Do I not call them?
Huh?
Mina. And also that's another thing being raised by my mom. My mom was like, like always find out. So when UCT was like, hey, babes, you're not going to get in. I'm calling them, like admissions office, like I've just received my letter, because that time also was back in the day, so they used to send the physical letters. I'm like, I got the letter, you guys are saying I did not, I'd like to understand why. And I'm so thankful for that lady who was like, did you look at your certificate? I'm like, yeah. She says, what does it say? I'm like, yeah, it says diploma, and I can do a diploma or a certificate, but hey, I don't want to do engineering or science or anything like that. I just want English. They're like, no, but you still need to qualify in APS points and all of that. And then I remember she was like, you're going to have to either go back and redo your maths and science so you can get those up, or you need to go the diploma route.
Okay, cool. So you fight with UCT and you don't get in.
Yes.
Did you feel like a failure at that point?
I don't think I felt like a failure, but I did feel disappointed, right? Because I think failure for me would have mean it's definite, as in failure, it's the end, check you later, right? Where it wasn't like that. It was more of a, okay, so how I thought, by 2011, I was gonna, because I matriculated in 2010, I was gonna go to UCT, I'm gonna be doing English Lit and linguistics. Now I had to take a step back and go, that's not the life that I'm gonna live, right? And I remember my mom also sat me down and she said, okay, this is where you want to be. Outside of you going back to do maths and science, because my mom knew me, I wasn't going to go back and do maths and science because I was already like, I don't see how this is going to play a role in my life. She said, outside of you going back to redo that, what is it that you can then do to get to that? And then for me, English literature and linguistics was always about words, writing, reading, learning. So I was like, I think journalism is adjacent to that, right? And my mom was like, okay, maybe then find something within journalism that could get you to that point. And that's when I then applied for a diploma in journalism. And it was amazing. Like but then also it wasn't immediate, because then when I matriculated, I think I had like two or 3 years where I was like a promoter. So when you went into Checkers, I was the lady that was standing there going, so when I say, would you like to try this Knorr, blah, 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 blah. So that's what I was doing. Okay, so then I was like, journalism is where I'm going to head to. So then for 2 or 3 years. And then also the other reality was my mom at that time had retired from work. So there was no funds for me to go study. So 2011 all the way to 2013, and then I started doing promotions. I got into modeling because I needed to raise as much money as I possibly can to fund my studies. And then I did my diploma in journalism, and because I absolutely loved it, it meant I get to read, I get to write, but then also you're learning about the ethics of journalism, good reporting and all of that. And then my A+ student abilities then came back again, because then I think I was focused on it. So then I was excelling academically, and then I was like, okay, maybe I'm not gonna go and study English literature and linguistics after that in terms of a degree. What else am I interested in when I graduated? So then I graduated with a diploma in journalism with distinction. And then I was like, okay, what could I, go study again? That's interesting. By that time, I'd already gotten into the professional space. I was working for Times Media as an editorial assistant for a wonderful magazine called Business Class. It doesn't exist anymore. And then I think I was in that space, the professional space, and marketing, sales, advertising, with things that were buzzing around. It was like, oh, maybe I could actually go study towards a degree in, marketing. And then I enrolled at Wits Plus, part-time studies, because I couldn't afford again to just study. I had to work. And then I studied towards a degree in psychology and marketing. And I was like, I need the psychology so I can understand human behavior, so I can better influence them to do what I need them to do from a marketing perspective. absolutely loved it, committed, really, in it, also doing well there, graduating with distinction. I didn't anticipate that I was going to fall in love with marketing to a point where it wasn't solely going to be used for, or rather psychology, it wasn't going to be used for marketing. It was actually going to be about understanding human behavior, understanding what makes us human and, our cognitive abilities and what we face, and essentially living in a life that is challenging. I mean, we need to be honest, life is challenging. And then how do we cope as humans? And then I fell in love with psychology, went on to do a honors in psychology, did super well there as well, distinctions all the way, and leads me to where I am now, where I'm doing my master's in critical diversity studies. And it's really linking it with psychology, like human behavior, linking it to what I was saying in the, when I was sharing in the beginning about human stories. And human stories and life is all about the challenges that we overcome, the joys that we have, and who we make of ourselves in relation to what is happening around us. And I think with my studies now, it's also then understanding that we live in an unfair world that discriminates, right? Where power is then making other people privileged and others are disadvantaged. And now it's merging all these things that I'm interested in and seeing how I can be an advocate for, individuals and people who are marginalized in our societies.
Actually, that's one of the things I love about you, which I think it defines the kind of person that you are.
Yeah.
Right? So as I was speaking to Karabo, he mentioned that his father was an entrepreneur, right? And then he got a template from that. And then it shaped the person that he is today.
Yeah.
It sounds to me like you stumbled across this because you always thought maybe English and literature was going to be the way.
Yes.
But now it's literally psychology and understanding human behavior and all that. Do you think you are happier now, or you still have that edge to say, I want to go do that?
English lit. Well, I was going to say, I always envision myself publishing in the future. And I think the biggest thing about English literature, apart from the fact that, especially when it's like Victorian authors, like Emily Bronte, Charlotte Bronte, like they're just my favorite. And like the romance and the beauty of it, that's what I really loved. But I think for me, English lit and linguistics was linked more with Neli in the future would want to tell people stories, right? But I think as I'm growing older, I'm starting to understand that I don't necessarily need a qualification in storytelling to be able to tell stories, because every human being, there are people who don't have any form of qualifications, but they're telling stories. And I think that's where I am now, where it's not necessarily about what am I going to study that's going to enable me to do what God has brought me on earth to do, but rather what are the type of experiences I want to have in my life, and what is the knowledge I would like to acquire intentionally through formal education that's going to make me the best person I can be to fulfill the promise that God has for my life. And it's definitely linked with serving those around me. And I think that's just where I am now.
Okay. So we're going to ride off what you said, right?
Yeah.
Before you get to serving and everything, you said that you don't need a qualification in order for you to do something. I don't want to specifically box it here.
Yes.
Right? I want to generalize it so that the next person can actually understand the power of your mind and the abilities that you have, right?
Yeah.
So maybe let's talk to an 18-year-old Neli.
Yes.
So she's here sitting with you, struggling with maybe self-identity, what to study or whatever, right? How do you then get her mind going, psychologically speaking, to say, this is how I want you to think. This is how I think you could shape your future so that you can become someone. You don't really need to have a voice, but just so you can live a happy, fulfilled life.
And it's so interesting, right? Because, and also, and I need people to understand, I am not a psychologist. I have not done a master's in psychology. I am not registered with the Health Council. That's in the future. But I mean, I've got honors qualification in science, in psychology. But I think 18-year-old Nelly had a lot of anxiety. I'm not going to lie. 18-year-old Nelly was fearful of the future, wasn't sure where their life was going to head to. 18-year-old Nelly yeah, shame. Sometimes I think about, especially 18-year-old Nelly, because I was in matric. Like in matric, I went through, and I know, I mean, when I was having a conversation with Glenda, my psychologist now, and I was telling her, in matric, I went through a depression, and she was like, were you clinically diagnosed? I'm like, no, I wasn't, but I know what I was going through, because I remember the panic attacks I would get about what's going to happen to me? Like, what is this? Like, what's my life going to be? But I think 18-year-old Nelly is, you've got God in you. I think that's number one. Like, you've got God in you. And God is amazing, guys, And I think 18-year-old Nelly just needed to inhale and exhale and understand that if you've got God in you and God has got your back, he will make things happen for you, because he already knows what your life is going to look like. And yes, you also need to come to the party, but it's coming to the party in line with his will and the gifts he's given you. And like, again, I said, I don't think anybody on earth, and maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think anybody's gifts that are God-given are only to serve them. It's always in relation to serving those who are, around them and next to them, your neighbor, your friend. And I think for me, it was going to be, you're on the right path because you care about people. You genuinely care about people. Keep that top of mind. And everything else, think about what are the type of experiences you want to have. If you want to go learn. If you want to go, and I think that's another thing. I still think it's beneficial to go learn, because it also affords you a certain type of thinking where you're able to think more critically because of formal education, but it's not the end all and be all. And I think 18-year-old Nelly, God has you, man. Like, you've got this and you're going to do great. What are the type of experiences you want to have? What good do you want to put out into the world? And just go forth confidently knowing that God has your back.
What is learning to you? Because when you say someone must go learn, they think about the classroom. Mm-hmm. And let's say the Neli right now, she's sitting somewhere in Katlehong. Mm-hmm. No electricity, no food. She hasn't eaten since the morning. The only meal she's going to have is dinner. Mm. And then now you're telling her to go learn. Mm-hmm. They think, nah, I'm not about to open a textbook and whatnot. Yeah. What is defined learning? So that I think for me, it's more important for people to understand that learning isn't a classroom thing, right? Even at Ulwazi, some of the learning that we do, it's outside classroom with practical things. Yes. So what are the practical skills or mental toughness or stability, if I may say, that you think Neli in Katlehong must develop at the high school age, so that you can see whether you fail or pass matric? It doesn't really matter. What matters is the mentality that you have that will take you forward.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good question. I think my definition of learning would be is to acquire knowledge that you don't already have, right? Okay. And simplest is children who are born. We've all been born. We had to learn how to do anything and everything. You had to learn how to, maybe crying, maybe it's not something that you learn and it's just innate, but you learn how to talk, you learn how to walk, you learn how, and I think learning for me is understanding that you live in a society, and that's the unfortunate thing, you live in a society that says you need to work in order to live and survive. And I think that's the basic fact. We all need to come to the realization that we don't live in a society that says we see you as a human and we see that you've got human rights that you actually should, that they should be fundamental in your own existence, and then do as is with your life as you would like. That's not the reality. The world says, if you want to be here and you want to live and you want to be okay, you need to work. But then working means you need to understand that I don't have certain knowledge already. Like if you're going to go into high school or if you're going to go into school and the teacher's going to want to tell you about 1 + 1, you first need to understand what is the concept of 1, right? In order for you to add it with 1. So for me, learning is not necessarily about, like I said, formal education. Go sit down and learn and go do all these degrees and PhDs. Yes, if you want to do that, great, do it. But learning is understanding that you come into this, in an analogy, because I love analogies, you come into this world as a bottle that's empty, right? Learning means as you're going to go through from your birth all the way to your death, you need to add into this bottle. And it's good that all the things that you're learning or all the things that you are adding into this bottle is things that is going to make your time here more enjoyable. And enjoyable not in the sense that 24/7, 365, you're happy and you're having a great time, but it's actually going, I understand that life comes with strife, but I'm still going to want to make certain experiences happen for myself. And then learning then has to go, I don't know how to do something, or I don't know how to get somewhere. What is this? And also, it's just simple as understanding, like, Kgosi is different from Neli. What makes Kgosi? The only way I'm gonna know what makes you different to who I am is if I'm having a conversation with you. And that's the other thing. It's having conversation with people, listening to their stories, listening to how they've crafted their lives. And I think when you called me for this podcast, I was like, oh, that's fundamentally what you're looking to do, right? Because life is learning. And that's the thing. I think if we stop going, learning is formal in a classroom, the journey of life is essentially learning. It's just now, sometimes it's more directed and more intentional and formalized. But in essence, if you're going to learn how to dance, and I'm using that because I like to dance, I'm not saying I'm a great dancer, it's you learning how to move your feet to the music or move it twice, 3 times or whatever. But learning is essentially recognizing that there's something within my surrounding in this world, in my environment, that I do not necessarily know, that I want to know. And sometimes, and that's another reality, not all learning is going to be intentional and you saying, I want to learn. Sometimes life is going to teach you. So instead of being on the receiving end where you now need to react because of the circumstances, is you sitting down and going, life is never going to be easy. And that's the one thing I always say, like, life is never going to be easy. What are then the things that I can learn, expose myself into, look to understand, that will then make my life, a bit easier and more joyful as I navigate my existence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. I would talk the whole day on that topic. But certain people do certain things because of certain traumas in their lives, right? I went into entrepreneurship because of growing by myself, having to learn to live with the minimum that I had, sometimes going 2 days without food. And I decided, you know what, I don't want to go back there.
Yeah.
Right? Fortunate enough, got adopted and all that. But then what is that one traumatic experience in your life that kind of shaped Nelly? It could be a challenge, it could be trauma, anything that was hard in your life that made you be like, okay.
And maybe that's the thing, right? Where I know also when people meet me, sometimes people think like I grew up like Lani and all, and my thing is that's not the case, because like I always say, people that I meet and I'm having conversations with, like, like, let's get into, like, mina, isinkwa ekhaya was like luxury. If we ever got, and not like isinkwa is in Albany, like, I don't know if they still have it. If you go to like a supermarket or Checkers or something. Yeah, ShopRite. Yes. You need to put through the machine. Yeah. So to have that in my home, like, we were rich. Like, we were like, because there were times when I remember breakfast, lunch, and supper, basically, right? But also, it was normal. It was okay. It was great. But I think maybe if I were to pinpoint a trauma or significant moment in my life, was like, again, in matric, when my mom had left her job. And it's so interesting because now I'm older and my mom and I have more of a friend relationship, even though she's still my mom, right? But we have a more friend relationship. And I remember when she left her job in matric, and like I was saying, I was going through the anxiety, like panic attacks, and like I will say I was going through depression, and I was like to her the one time, and now like, what's gonna happen to my life? And I remember I was so angry at my mom for, hey dude, you brought me into this world and now you are no longer working, what's gonna become of me? And then my sister Utuli, I remember one of the times she sat me down and she said, so the trauma was my mom leaving her job, which meant for me, there's no way my future is going to continue because I don't have financial resources to make anything of myself, right? And then my sister sitting me down going, I hear what you're saying, but you also need to understand that mom didn't say for any one of us, Mina Nukai, the elder sister. So it's not like your situation is not in like something different. We went through it, right? So I need you to understand, Uti, I can different now. but how long are you going to complain for? And thank you. Because then when she said at that time, I was like, nah. I was like, not happy with it. But she was like, how long are you going to complain? Are you going to complain? I mean, that time I'm 18. So you're complaining now as an 18-year-old. Are you going to complain again when you're a 19-year-old? You're going to be complaining in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s. You're going to be a 70-year-old grandma who's complaining. And I remember when a couple of weeks later, and that's the thing, and that's why I'm like, it's good to listen to people's stories, because sometimes you're not going to get the message there, but that seed will linger and it will stay with you. And a couple of weeks later, months later, and then I keep playing her words, and that's why I remember it vividly when it was like, "Utulu right, vele. I'm going to keep complaining, and then what's going to happen?" And I think for me, that's when I had to sit down and take a step back and go, the reality is, umama akasasebenzi. 2, ayikho imali yokuthi ufunde. 3, as you're sitting there, Neli, now, with that matric, you made 38%, and physical science at 38%, what are you going to do with your life? And I think for me, I then realized, back to learning, as I was sitting in my room, I didn't have the resources and the knowledge to know what I could do. And that's when I had to go, okay, I need to go to the library and get books, non-fiction, fiction books. And that's the other thing where there is value to non-fiction, to fiction books as well. Non-fiction books are great because it's people who've lived life and they've done experiences and they're here to tell you, this is how I made something of myself. But also in fiction books, you're able to see people's stories and you can able to assess like, okay, this is the value that this person had. And I think for me, as I exposed myself to more books and I was intentional about surrounding me with newness, right? New knowledge, new people who had different walks of life, that I could already start seeing from their lives what it is, number one, where they came from, where they are now, and where they wanted to be, but also then understanding that they had to do something. So for me, I think my biggest trauma was mommy just going, and it's so interesting because now I'm older and I get it. Like, hey, corporate is corporate. Like,
we'll get into that.
Yeah.
We'll get into corporate, but mom is piecing out,
yeah,
and now you guys don't have an income coming in.
Yes.
At that moment, do you wish dad was there?
See, that's the other thing. I don't think I wish dad was there because remember, I never had a reference of dad ever being there to provide. So there was not going to be dad also because he's never done anything. It was then a time of no one is coming to save us.
Ooh. Okay.
Right. There's no one coming here to save us. How are we going to pick ourselves up? And I always say, I started working, and it's so interesting because I say it now, like I started working at 15, right? Where I was doing promos in high school even before I even do it in when I was in my 20s. But when I was doing it when I was 15, 16, it was so I could have enough money to go to the movies. But I think as I got older and after the trick, then realizing, so when I'm now going to go to a Checkers and I'm going to be promoting Oral-B toothpaste or something, it's no longer so I can take that money to go watch something at Ster-Keniko. It's actually taking that money to go, because by that time I didn't even have a laptop, is to go to Kempton Park. There was Sis Sylvia who used to type CVs, so I can like write it at home in like just normal pen and paper, but take it to her so she could formally. So now actually having this money to intentionally use, so one, I can get exposure to other opportunities. And at that time, I mean, I've got no qualifications, right? It wasn't even like I'm gonna be picky about what type of job I wanted to do. And I think for me, the biggest also was like promotions were fun also because I think you worked for 5 hours, right? You worked for 5 hours, but I knew that I'm one, practicing public speaking because I'm now having conversations with people. I'm building relationships, and that's the other thing. You meet people when you're promoting who are just going to tell you about their life and tell you about the things that they're studying and working towards. And I'll never forget this one day we were promoting. I think it was the X spray, right? And we were going to go promote it at Wits University. My mom, remember, this is now after matric. Yeah. Like, I don't even think I had gone to do my diploma in journalism. So I think it was the 2-year gap.
Yeah.
And my mom comes with me because, my mom comes with me. And then she's sitting there the whole day and then we're walking around. And I remember looking at the students who had so much purpose, right? And they were just walking around, and you could tell these kids know what they're gonna do with their lives, right? And I remember going, I can also not be like them, but I can also have purpose for my life. What is that? What does that look like? And going back home and having a conversation with my mom and like, this is where I want to be. This is where I want to go. I see myself at Wits studying something. Remember that time it was like English Lit. But I think it's also the realization that we need to have that you need to constantly pour into yourself, and growth is a continuous journey. There's no start or finish. And I don't know what I was watching sometime during the week, and they were saying, if you're not growing, it means you're dead, right? Mm. And if you're alive, you shouldn't be dead, which means you should be growing the entire time. So, yeah.
Sure. You said I could also have purpose.
Yes.
What is your purpose now?
My purpose in life is to bring joy into the lives of others. And that's I'm not even gonna lie. Like that's my purpose. In terms of how do I deliver that? And that's the thing. Sometimes I think also we live in a world where we think things need to be big and great. Like, oh, I bought someone a Range Rover, like I'm gonna be Oprah Winfrey. But I remember when I was going to youth, and in high school, breaks, they had church at school, so then I'd go there, and I remember, and the people who were preaching were like other students, and I remember the one guy was like, take the moment in every area of your life to acknowledge everyone around you. And we're like, what do you mean? And he's like, greet people, right? Because greeting people is essentially saying to people, I see you, right? And I recognize your entity, and I recognize that you're here. And I think I took that as a 14 to 15-year-old, and I think everywhere I go, sanbonan, right? And it may seem like frivolous and tiny, but then you start realizing that there are some people, and especially when you're getting older and some of the tough conversations you're having with people around you, and somebody comes to you and says, I was going through a lot and I was contemplating suicide, but that one time you said hello to me made me go, oh, this person sees me, and I'm here for a purpose. And I think it seems small, and of course there's other bigger things that I see myself, delivering that. But I think my purpose just here on earth is really just to bring light into the lives of others.
Why?
Because we need to just have a good time. No, but because God is light. And that's what I'm saying, because I'm like, there's no other way I can speak about it but by not speaking about God. Because how God had intended it to be for humankind was bright, was brightness, was light, was growth, was joyful times, was that. And it just so happens that, yes, we're in a time where there's hate, there's hunger, there's all these things. But the essence of humanity and existence for me is about that light. And I think that's why I just want to reawaken that in other people. And so that they may, because then also once that light is awakened in you, you are then able to fulfill your purpose. And again, your purpose is linked to serving other people around you.
When you speak about that light, I remember, I think I was booked to speak, and I wanted something that was tangible, that the people can see.
Yes.
But then I didn't know, because I was using something that was abstract. So Genesis 1 verse 3, where God said, let there be light. And then by seeing, then he was able to create everything, right?
Yeah.
How do you define that light? Because for me, I said the light could be a mentor. The light could be a supportive mother. Mm-hmm. The light could be a friend like G. I have a friend called G. Yeah. And he gives me light every time, because sometimes I want to give up looking at how toxic corporate can be. Yeah. And then he's like, focus on 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. But the one thing that I learned from him as well was just working for a certain purpose, right? He's working for his kids, so that they never had to go through some of the things that we're going through. I don't have kids yet, but now my being here on earth, I want to provide light to all the clients of Ulwazi, to the other CDSOs in Katlehong that don't have anyone. What is that light for you?
Oh, that is a deep question. Oh, that is a deep question. What is the light that I want to spread?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very deep question. That's a very, very deep question. I think the light that I want to share is the realization that we are not alone, right? And we're not alone physically, because there's people around you. We're not alone spiritually, because God is in us, around us. We're not alone psychologically, because the experiences that you think, like Neli growing up, I'm like, yo, as I'm the only one, that's not the case. There's people around you, right? We're not alone, and there's always someone who's gone through, is going through, will likely go through the life experiences that you're going through now. Because I think also in this world where things are like tangible and, you know, my body's there and your body's there, there's a lot of separateness. But if you're thinking about it in the abstract world, right, the metaphysical, I don't think spirits are disconnected. I think, because spirit, remember, also we're an extension of God, right? And God is everywhere and he's omnipresent. And I think if we then go back to the I am not, yes, I may be alone in my thoughts, in my body, but in terms of my existence and who I am, I'm never alone. Because that's the other thing is once that light of I'm not alone is there, you're then able to get the support that you need from people around you. And you're able to then help the people that are around you. So I think my light is we're not alone. Like, you're never alone. And also linking it back to, because you can't do anything but alone. That's the reality of life. When it comes, what's the African proverb? Like, if you want to go far, if you want to go fast, go alone, but you want to go far, go with others. Sure. And I think that's the fundamental, for me, the fundamental essence of humanness and being alive. It's the connectedness. It's we are all like linked together and we journey through existence and life linked. It's just we live in a world that's physical that then also separate, like typical example, I'm a black woman already, I'm separate from a man, right? I'm Ndebele, so now I'm not like I'm a Xhosa or Maswati or whatever. So everything that's an identifier further makes you like separate and alone, and it distances you from other people. Where, yeah, it's okay in this world, but if you return to the essence of you are from God and he's brought you here, and you going through different experiences is the other person going through different experiences. So why don't you then extend yourself to even have a conversation with that person to understand how they're navigating life?
Okay, sure, interesting. So another thing that's common between us, it's the horrible place we've walked through.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to mention names or do anything, but given the purpose that you have now, give me 2 or 3 things that you think you've learned from that horrible place that shaped now, or rather that gave you the clarity of the kind of life that you want to live, number 1. And number 2, what can I expect from Neli in the next 2-3 years?
I think the one is the horrible place. And it's so interesting, right? Because I think my experience is different where, yes, like I remember what I said, I already approach life by saying what? Life is challenging, right? So the place was challenging, but I was okay. It's just things happened that made me go, I need to remove myself. But I think the 3 things that I've learned, the one is lead with truth.
They don't.
Yeah, like lead with, and it's always hard, particularly when there's leadership that is supposed to exemplify the values of an organization. And I mean, we're gonna talk off camera about my reasons for leaving, but it was you're not leading with truth, right? But now, in you're not leading with truth, it's now impacting me because I'm going, no, but this is the truth. You know, when you like know something like, no, but that's the truth. And somebody's going, no, that's not the truth. Look other way, right? And I think that was the one thing for me where lead with truth. And if a place, and I don't, and it's going to sound like Nelly, you don't know the real world. But if a place doesn't have truth, and also linking it back to God, because God is truth.
Sure.
If a place doesn't have truth, pumalap, like pumalap. And then I think the second would be devaluing people's humanness, their experiences, their challenges, right? And what do I mean by that? It's because you, one, don't articulate yourself very well, or you don't perform in the way that we want you to perform, or you don't know the execs that you need to know, then you don't matter. I don't think we're already human. Nothing should qualify us to be human. And being human for me already fundamentally means you should be treated with respect. You should be treated and recognize that you are of value and you've got something here to offer. And I think it was then taking a step back and going, oh, I can see
what Kgosi was talking about.
Yeah, right? Like it was that. Like, oh, okay, this is what the people had been going through. And it's very disheartening, and that's the thing when you're going, oh my goodness. And then I think the third thing also is always prioritize yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, because, and that's the sad thing, we live in a capitalistic world. We work for organizations that are only concerned about the bottom line. And the reality is, if that means they need to hit their targets and you're going to end up in hospital or dead, I don't think they're considering that. They're not going to go, oh, but yes, we want to make $25 billion this year. But Kgosi and Neli is struggling, but maybe we should, bring our goal down. No. And it's going to be, we want that $25 billion. Everybody here needs to make it happen. And then it's unfortunate that there are people who then suffer. And now I'm going to say a little bit about, which is what my research and dissertation is about in my studies, where I'm very passionate about diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And, a lot of organizations are now coming to the table and saying, DEI this, and we want our employees to feel like they belong. Bringing my psychology again, where I'm interested in people's mental health, it's now looking to understand, the diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives and projects that are introduced into the workplace, how are those impacting employees' mental health? Because at the end of the day, we work for organizations that when they're thinking mental health, they're only thinking about stress and burnout. Those are the only things, maybe from my experience, we have heard, okay, if you've got burnout, these are the numbers, or do that. Whereas we live in a society where there are neurodivergent people. We are working with people who've got different types of diagnoses, whether they're schizophrenic, they've got ADHD. How does the work environment and those DI initiatives, one, are they catering for them? That's the first question. And then secondly, how are those initiatives then impacting their overall mental well-being?
Interesting.
Yeah.
I'd love to read that paper.
Yes! Oh, yeah, I need to go right.
So we've got a closing tradition on this podcast, where the previous guest leaves a question for the next guest. Right? And I don't get to see the questions until now.
Oh!
So now this is a question that was left for you. They didn't know they were leaving it for you.
Okay.
So the question is, what is the smallest habit that has had the biggest impact or outcome on your life, and how long did you practice it before you saw the results?
I'm sorry, guys. I'm not here to preach, but prayer.
Prayer.
Prayer is a habit. And that's the thing. It had to get to, for me, it had to get to a point where it was a habit, right? But sitting down, lying down, or whatever circumstance, going into myself and realizing that, and that's, okay, maybe let me, realizing that I do not have control over everything. And why is that the case? Because I think I'm so much in the control. Like, I'm like, this is the way I want my life to be. This are the things I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to study. That sometimes I tend to think everything that happens in and around my life is because of me. But I think prayer is that one moment when I sit down and I actually realize that, oh, I do not have control. And I'm not going to lie to you. I still struggle with understanding that you don't have control. You are not in control to the level that you think. But I think the habit is just going to God and saying, I realize that, yes, you have given me free will and autonomy. But at the end of the day, if I want things to happen in my life in a certain way, one, I need to have a conversation with you, because is it something that you really want for my life, and is it in line with my purpose? And then two, who do I then need to become to actualize that? Ooh. And I think that's it.
You know, when you say that, I think how I closed was, there's this verse in the Bible that says that those that know their God, they shall become, and then they do exploits, right? So the becoming part is very important. And I feel like a lot of the generation we're trying to inspire, they miss that. They think just because you're smart, therefore things should happen. But then they forget that you need to transform and become someone so that you can
100%.
Nelly, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
This was an absolute treat. I hope to have you again soon. There's a lot I want us to unpack.
Yes.
On your dissertation work and everything.
Oh, yeah.
But also just the psychological aspects of it, because I feel as though we didn't go deep today.
Yeah.
And I feel they're important in shaping the young Neli from Katlehong or from Tembisa or Kukuletu in Cape Town that is trying to navigate this life thing. And also that has a 30% for math and science. And already the world we live in, they deem them as failure.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping to have you back again soon.
I'd love to be back.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for this.
Cool.
Have a good one.
Cheers.
Yay!
We are done.
Oh, that was so quick.
How long was
it?
quick.